He lives in a big, noisy and crowded city with a busy rhythm of life. But he is interested in another world. A world with no fuss, where a person lives preserving the heritage of his ancestors and the precepts of nature. Konstantin Kuksin, an ethnographer, traveler, a current member of the Russian Geographical Society, as well as the founder and director of the Museum of Nomadic Culture in Moscow. Nomads of the Great Steppe are his favorite topic, and he can talk about it for hours.
Про кочевую цивилизацию.
About the nomadic civilization that, like a patchwork quilt, covers our planet. We will talk about all of this on the sacred land of Ulitau. Welcome to Ulitau. Konstantin Kuksin in the new season of Dala project.
Как вы, наверное, уже догадались,
As you may have guessed, today we'll talk about music and traditional Kazakh folk instruments.
И мой собеседник,
My guest today is Azamat Bakiya, an instrument maker, a musician, and the founder of a private museum of traditional Kazakh and Turkic folk instruments.
народных инструментов.
I was born here. From an early age, I was interested in Kazakh national instruments. Whenever I heard someone talking about them, whether it was a TV program or a conversation between people, I always stopped to listen. But I couldn't imagine that I would find myself in this area, although I was always passionate about this. Perhaps this is why I became who I am today. How many instruments do you have in your collection? Approximately 1,500 instruments. But their number changes. It's not a constant number. Some of the instruments I give to my guests, colleagues, musicians, who borrow them to play. But I give it on the condition that they will write a piece specifically for this instrument and promote it in general. These are different versions of the Bizgi instrument belonging to different Turkic peoples. This instrument is 200 years old. It is the most ancient Bizgi in my collection. This Bizgi belonged to a man named Kalek Kumakayuli. I cleaned it, but decided not to restore it. Decided to leave like this. Starting from here, these are sasurnais I made. This tambourine belonged to a shaman. That's how she would beat the tambourine. To be honest, we are afraid to use it. After all, it belonged to a shaman. Now, before the tea is ready, sit down and rest. My wife and I will play something for you.
Коллекция
There are
Азамата.
so many musical instruments in Azamat's collection that it seems to me that an instrument appears with every turn of the wheel of history. Azamat, what was the first instrument you made with your own hands? The first instrument was saz sirnai. I made it in the 6th grade. I keep it in my archive. It cracked a bit, but I glued it back. If I had not made it back then maybe I would not have been doing the thing to which I devote all my free time. Let's structure our meeting like this. We will talk about the instruments, and the instruments will also talk. Before I began learning the craft of making instruments, there have only been one version of saz sirnai in existence. The rest you could only find in books. When I studied at the conservatory, I made all kinds of saz sirnais in my 2nd year. And today the conservatory teaches using them. Let me first play you the sound of saz sirnai. I will play you Yestay Berkimbayev's song Kusni Korlan. Azamat, this is amazing. Such a small but sonorous instrument. The Ulitau mountains seem to respond. It sounded like an echo. They all sound different, I take it? Yes, they have different capabilities. In the language of music, this is called range. Saz sirnai has the biggest one, which is called uildek. It has a beautiful, low sound. I will now play for you Abai's song Josiz Tunde Jarikai, the light of the moon in the quiet night. This is uildek. Now let's listen to how Tastawik sounds. It has a higher sound. You probably noticed that this instrument has two sounds. There once was a famous scientist, ethnographer, Akseleo Seydimbekov. We knew him while he was still alive. So in one of his works, he mentioned a duophonic saz sirnai found somewhere on the Kazakh land. Other peoples may know this instrument as a duophonic ocarina. We also call it kosaz, kasuildek. That is, a double saz, a double uildek. I want to play a famous composition called Yerden by our countryman Ikilas Dukenoli on it. As I understand it, the second whistle performs the second function, like in a dombira. Yes, one side of this instrument gives you only one continuous sound, while the second can be used to play compositions, such as the ones played on sabizgi or in Pythagorean tuning. Let me play you a short excerpt from Anshinin Zari, The Hunter's Sorrow. This is what a duophonic instrument sounds like. Azamat, are these instruments made of clay? Looks like they're all different. Is this because everything is handmade and the timbre would be unique? There are 9 types of clay in our region. We even have black clay. For example, Jezdi has more yellow and white clay. After firing instruments made from different clays, we recorded their sound. Then empirically, we determined which clay is best suited for the manufacture of one or another type of instrument. And the work we have done is a reason for our pride. How difficult is it to make a saz sirnai? It took me a long time to make my first saz sirnai. But today, if nothing comes up, I can make 100-120 saz sirnais per day. We deliver them to kindergartens, music schools and colleges throughout Kazakhstan. We also teach this craft to our students. Marvelous! Can I take a closer look? Is this all your work? Fantastic. I honestly wouldn't even know where to start if I had to make such an instrument. I understand the general idea. Russia also had such an instrument. It was called ocarina. I think all the peoples who mastered ceramics made similar instruments. There is an ensemble in Kazakhstan that consists of musicians who play solely this sasernai. This is far the only such ensemble among all Turkic-speaking countries. Incredible! The Museum of Nomadic Culture in Moscow has sasernais made in Kyrgyzstan. They don't sound bad, but they don't compare to yours. In Kyrgyz, it's called chopachor. Chopo means saz, clay, and chor means sernai, a wind instrument. Shall we continue talking about wind instruments? I see you have a flute. What is it called in Kazakh? In Kazakh, this instrument is called sibizgi. It also has many varieties. They are divided according to the type of material from which the instrument is made. Karakamys sibizgi is made from reed. Kuray sibizgi, ak kuray, bal kuray, or giz kuray are all made of different types of a plant called kuray. Agash sibizgi is made of wood. Jez sibizgi is made of copper. The sibizgi I have in my hands is for an orchestra or an ensemble. The second one is traditional. To show their differences, I will play both. Sibizgi intended for an ensemble or orchestra sounds like this. And now, I will play the traditional sibizgi, which has 3 holes, which adds the continuous sound. It's as if the wind is whooshing or insects are buzzing in the steppe. Is this flute made of bamboo? Reed. Reed. But in Russia, such an instrument was called kaluga and was made of an angelica plant with large umbellate flowers. It was considered a shepherd's instrument. I have one such pipe from Iran in my collection. I never mastered them. Azamat, I also see instruments that I recognize. Jews' harps. Do you make them yourself too? Yes, in Kazakh we call it shankobiz. The one in my hand is a Kyrgyz one, however. It's from my collection. I really love playing it. I can play many instruments in general, but the most difficult for me to master was this little shankobiz. It took me a long time to learn how to play it. Now, let me play my own composition on it. One master told me a secret of how to make a Jew's harp that summons the most powerful spirits. The secret is in the material used to make the tongue of the Jew's harp. What do you make tongues from? I believe that in order to develop in the right direction, we need to move away from shamanism and metaphysics and move towards science. Which is why I read a lot of literature about acoustics and related fields. As for your question, we make the tongue in the same way everyone else does. from special steel using scientific calculations. If you make the tongue thicker, the sound will be rougher. If you make it thinner, then sound will be softer. There are no secrets here. Tell me, Azamat, do you have wooden harps in your collection? We call this instrument shankobez, while the one you are talking about is called shange awez. The Kyrgyz have a similar instrument which is called jashkovez. We have shange awez. In one of the programs, we talked about the famous shaman from Ulitau, Koylibai Auliye. What instrument did he play? Shamans use kobez as their instrument. And I heard that he played the kobez. Speaking about which, we must mention Korkut Ata, a legendary person who lived on the Kazakh land and invented the kobez. Among other Turkic-speaking peoples, he is known under the name of Korkut Baba. You play this instrument while seated. I will play it for you now. All Turkic peoples have such an instrument. You correctly noted that among other peoples it is called kilkiyak or morinkur. We call it kilkobez.
The
sound resembles that of the Kyrgyz kilkiyak and Mongolian morinkur. In my opinion, the string instrument with horsehair is probably the most nomadic instrument born in the Great Steppe. With each spin of the wheel of history, people invent some new musical instruments. It was like this in the past, it is like this now, and it will be like this in the future. I see you have a tambourine in your collection. Kazakhs have 17 varieties of percussion instruments. Among them are dabil, davulpaz, kol dabil, jorig dabil, duliga, duriga, kepshik, shindawil. They were used for various purposes, like hunting, war, and so on. I hold in my hands a dabil. Shaman healers used to use them. I have a very old one in my collection. I received it as a gift from the descendants of one shaman. When giving me this dabil, they said that it contained incredible power. You know, I used to work in North Africa with the Tuareg people. The Tuareg have a tradition of gathering around a drum. They don't ask what clan you come from. They ask what drum you come from. Because before it was used to call on soldiers, and now it is used when gathering people to solve problems. How did ancient Kazakhs used to do this? If they needed to gather warriors to give some kind of a signal, what instrument did they use? The Kazakhs back then had several instruments used to call for people to gather in one place. And the most ancient one of them is kerney. It was primarily used in military campaigns. The sound of the kerney that I made can be heard 4 kilometers away. I read that in the past, those who blew the kerney were usually standing on a hill. This way, news could be passed along a chain over long distances. The time has come to talk about the most popular instrument in Kazakhstan. Which of its types are represented in your collections? If today dombura has its own well-established standard, then in the old days it had a lot of varieties, and each master made them based on his abilities and imagination. Only one thing remained unchanged. It was a plucked instrument with strings. The dombura I now have in my hands is connected to the history of our region, more precisely to the name of the famous scientist Kanish Satpayev, who, having thoroughly studied our region, handed more than 30 Kazakh songs to the musician ethnographer Alexander Zatayevich. I have two domburas that belonged to Satpayev. Here is a copy of one of them, which he used to play during his studies in Tomsk. The sound of this dombura shows that it was made for orchestras and ensembles. What are the main differences between such a traditional dombura and the classical one, which has become a symbol of Kazakhstan lately? A very good question, a very important one. The instrument that you hold in your hands has 19 frets. That is, in the language of music, it provides for the entire chromatic scale. This is very important for domburas used in orchestras and ensembles. Back in the day, each region had domburas with their own number of frets, based on which separate music schools were formed. These are our musical traditions, and we must not forget them. I believe that we should create compositions with these traditions in mind. And we are working on it. We want to popularize traditional instruments, for example, to replace modern strings with those that were made from sheep intestines, like in ancient times. I dream that dombura that has its own special sound, depending on the region, would be revived. I know that there is a dombura festival in Kazakhstan. You once told me that it would be great to celebrate the Kui festival. What is the essence of this idea? Fortunately for us, we have more than 90 types of musical instruments. We are proud of it. And here the most important thing is the Kui itself, meaning the composition, what we play. With the Kui's help, we convey our emotions. For example, an artist expresses his emotions on a canvas. This way, he expresses his worldview. A musician conveys this through music. And this connection between the musician and his mood is the most valuable. Therefore, in my understanding, it is not so much the instrument that is important, but what it conveys. And this can be done using compositions. It is thanks to the Kui that the instrument lives. Kui is the key to its longevity. If you were able to convey your feelings with the help of your favorite instrument, this will be true art. Thank you so much, Azamat. I got great pleasure from talking to you, from listening to the sounds of your amazing instruments, and I hope that our viewers will be inspired and will try to play Kazakh folk instruments. Or maybe they will make them with their own hands, so that a composition, a real Kui, sounds from the heart in every home.